So I want to summarize a couple things and then make good on a promise. I promised you 3 principles that will make your organization innovative, guaranteed. So I'm going to hit you with those here in a moment. But let me start with some overarching concepts here. Look, one of the things that I found in my tenure within our agency, the key to innovation actually happens to be the key to the theme that we're talking about here is one of empowerment. So it's really empowering folks within your organization to act on their good ideas, to pursue the best possible ideas that are out there, creating the conditions where they can go after it safely without bringing down the whole enterprise, right? Either through an expensive mistake that everyone made or a direction that compromised the integrity of the entire organization. How can you empower your folks to do this? Very often in the world that we live in, the notion centers around control. That is, we can't afford to make a mistake. We must decide for other people who aren't capable of deciding for themselves. And this, in the end, is the thing that devastates innovation. So it turns out, as I approached my particular job, the very people who were the biggest advocates of innovation were the ones who engaged the most in these counterproductive behaviors, those of controlling the workforce and so on. Really, too many rogue projects. We need to consolidate our funding into one great big project that no one really asked for and go after that and do it. I actually, before I get into my 3 principles, I want to read something that seems to be a common theme throughout the day. So if you have not read the Agile Manifesto, you can. Google it. It's just a couple sentences. It's worth going after. It's really the same theme that everyone has said over and over today. You can get a t-shirt and put this on your t-shirt or certainly hang it up over your desk. These are principles that will check wayward behavior and will help you get to an agile end state. Now, again, by folks who don't practice it, agile is seen as sort of, it was said earlier today, effectively, a chaotic process. It is, if you've actually engaged in it, it is anything but chaotic. Another thing that's very, in fact, it determines at every moment what people should be focused on. At every moment, as a developer, the kinds of things that you should do through a very rigorous but adaptive process. So it's not willy-nilly. But again, here are the 4 principles. See if these themes resonate with what we've been saying all day today in the manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Okay, so that's principle number 1. We tend to say we've got this well-established process that we used over and over and over again, instead of actually engaging our end users in the process, and not proxies for professional program managers or others, the actual end users in whatever it is that we're looking to do. If you get the end users involved, it does away with the need for a lot of process. And so it is with Agile. You don't have to plan 2 years down the road if the end users are involved in iterating with you along the way. Second is, I'm going to throw out the word software here because it isn't just software. Working capabilities over comprehensive documentation. So how much better is it to actually pilot, throw it out there, really understand what the parameters are, and then actually engage in informed decisions rather than writing the perfect document in order to represent people's needs. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Again, if you involve the end user, the world gets a lot easier in terms of your engagement. And then lastly, responding to change over following a plan. This is the thing that I fight on a daily basis against the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy loves a plan. We made a plan. And we got to stick to that plan after all. The reason that we don't achieve what we intended to achieve is because all you people are deviating from the plan. The world has changed. The plan no longer applies, but we got to stick to it. Being systematically able to adapt is where you become innovative, and it's where we become efficient as an agile organization. So what I've just done for you is frame a set of principles that drives behavior. This is what's shaped the whole software development community, this Agile Manifesto. Well, I sought to use that same approach in attacking innovation in our organization. It was, again, the very people who were opposed or who were doing the most damage to innovation were the ones who said they supported it the most. So the only way to effectively communicate in that kind of environment is to establish some principles that everyone agrees to and then enact change according to those particular principles. It's called principled leadership. So here are mine. The first one is the biggest engine for innovation within our organization is the workforce. And specifically, we use the term the ones closest to the mission edge. So if at any point in our conversations if you ask someone whose responsibility is it to innovate in the organization, if they say someone other than themselves, you've got a problem in your organization. It is everyone's responsibility to innovate, and in fact, we all do. So people in our organization, in many organizations, say, we've got our R&D arm. Well, they innovate. We don't have an innovation problem. The problem is, again, that you're not unlocking the creativity of the entire workforce. So what do we do in order to do this? The principle for y'all to lock into, that's, again, universal here, or the action, is to give yourself in execution year fiscal agility. Okay, so I showed up, we made some early changes, had some quick victories straight away, and folks said, Doney, we love your ideas. Let's add them to the FY16 budget. Now this was FY13. I had just showed up, and of course the budget planning process for submission to Congress had just closed for our FY15 budget, and so, all right, let's wait till 16. Well, mine is a tenured position, and I don't intend to be there in FY16, we'll see. So getting money to enact my ideas 3 years hence was not going to fix the problem. But that's what many people see and many people accept. You've got to give yourself in execution year budget agility. And that can be mistaken for a slush fund. All too often is mistaken for a slush fund, so folks will set up, all right, we got to set aside some funds that we can act on very quickly, and it becomes the director's playhouse. Or, you bring in a chief innovation officer and he goes and spends it on behalf of everybody else as a fun exercise. That always ends badly. So you actually need, we call it being systematically opportunistic, a fairly robust, open-ended process to allow yourself to act quickly on good ideas. So who is the voice, who's the arbiter for how we spend these funds? The mission. No one else but the mission, that is the people closest to the edge of the organization, is authorized to enact those dollars. This has a big deal in engaging the entire workforce in new ideas, bringing forward and surfacing their new ideas in order to act. So there's a lot of emphasis on crowdsourcing. I'm a keen fan of crowdsourcing, but it's not going to solve your problem alone. We use crowdsourcing, to be sure, but we also do what I call crowd refinement. That's really engaging the entire workforce and surfacing and refining good ideas. We have a process for this. I won't go into all the pieces of this. But that crowd refinement offers anyone in our workforce the ability to come forward with an idea and act on it. Now, there's a big difference between an idea and an initiative. So again, remember our theme here is ideas to action. How do you get from an idea to action? Well, you want to create an initiative. An initiative is something that someone can say yes or no to. The difference between an idea and an initiative is a business case. And many folks in government are not familiar with making a business case. In the entrepreneurial world, if you're not good at making a business case, you don't feed your kids, and you go and find something else to do. This is something that many folks that we interacted with in the workforce who were coming forward with good ideas, they didn't know how to get to yes. And so this effectively was, we had a mentorship process by which we teach people how to make a case very quickly and robustly. Some people walk away because they don't want to have to go through that. Other folks, the ones who are really eager for change, go through this and do it. We've had marked successes. Some, obviously I can't talk about in this setting, that have had significant impact on national security. An idea that had laid dormant in our workforce that, when surfaced, saved billions of dollars and addressed the major national security gap. Now, something that came from this is initiative number 2 under principle number 1, is something called the Nerd Brigade. Now, actually, it was mentioned earlier here that GSA's initiative is very much like the Nerd Brigade. It has the same characteristics. What it was one of the initiatives that came out of our innovation development process. we have a group of technologists, and it takes a special breed of technologists in order to do this, who goes and sits with disenfranchised end users, observes we don't give them a requirement. It's not go out there and do this for them. Go and sit with them and watch what it is that they do, and then help them, through technology or otherwise, to change the way they do business. So this rather simple model, it was the reason we used the Nerd Brigade is originally we called it the Geek Squad, but that wouldn't have stood up over time. So we went out and did it. We've had tremendous successes from this model. It's probably been the most marked success in terms of what we do. So again, it gets to empowering the end users. Go sit with them. Don't ask for requirements from them. Sit with them. We sent out folks to our, we work in foundational intelligence, which is sort of knowing what all the important things are in the world so that in the event that a crisis breaks out, you know what things you need to be aware of and go after and what things you do and don't put a bomb on, among other things. It's a pretty mundane process. We've been doing it since the early 60s and not much had changed about it. When you went and sat with the analysts who were engaged in this, it turns out to be quite important. If you get it wrong, bad things happen. But not much had changed. We set nerds down with them. Within 2 weeks, and of observing their activity, they were able to take a very manual task as they went off to filling out a form that it consisted of about 200 fields. They watched what they did, saw the sites that they were going to, and we counted 16 clicks on this site and so on. Basically put in a, we call it the easy button. The analyst fills in one field, presses the button, it goes out, collects all that information, fills out the form. It increased the accuracy of the assessments by 20% and significantly saved times. We gave back to hundreds of our analysts 65% of their day, and we measured this pretty rigorously. That initiative, for 2 weeks worth of development, technologists sitting with analysts for 2 weeks. That initiative paid for itself within the first few hours. But our IT department said, wait a minute, you can't do that, because what happens when the easy button breaks? Who's going to sustain that? It introduced a very different note, and by the way, again, even if it broke after 6 months, the amount of value delivered to the organization, the amount of analyst time saved and handed back to them, would have easily been worth the cost. But it turns out it's pretty easy to fix now. We understand what the real requirements are and what kinds of things can save our organization a lot of money. But it introduces the concept of disposable IT, something that is radically different than the way that most CIOs deliver IT services to folks. Look, if you're delivering a system designed to have a 10-year life in a world where IT, the whole paradigm is changing every 2 years, you're probably going to be dated sometime early on in that 10-year process, and you're going to need to change. You need to, and I'm not saying don't do those kinds of things, but also consider the notion of these IT projects that are designed to be thrown away almost immediately, that can break and you walk away from it. That's okay. There's a lot to that piece. I won't go into all of how you engage in disposable IT, but it brings me to principle number 2. Principle number 2 is innovation requires creative destruction. Creative destruction is the free flow of resources from ideas that are falling behind to new and better ideas. Almost everything in a bureaucracy resists this free flow of resources. So that is, we engaged in this $100 million program, and there's a whole lot of people's careers who are on the line, and the director's going to have to go and answer to Congress if we don't get this right. So we can't let it go. And we throw then good money after bad. Now you heard the Standish Chaos Report. Brian mentioned this in his speech this morning. He mentioned a 95 or 94% failure rate. Switching that around here, a little higher math, that's a 6% success rate for initiatives over $10 million. Now, that same study shows initiatives under $1 million have a 75% success rate. Look at the striking difference between $10 million projects, only 6% succeed, regardless of how smart the program managers were who ran the thing, and 75% success rate for initiatives below $1 million. And yet we force, based on our whole decision structures, ourselves into these 10 million or beyond acquisition process decisions. Why do we do that? Because it's so darn hard to buy things. And oftentimes, so many things are interconnected that we have to get into this very complex management system. Can we change that? Can we change our decision structures, driving down to a start small, scale fast, fail cheap model for delivery. And it turns out you can, but you have to lead in order to get there. So this is the Neetopedia initiative that I mentioned really comes from this. Can we really empower, can we engage in acquisition models at dollar amounts that are much smaller than $1 million? $1 million is fine, or much less than this. In order to be able to do that, we have to drive down the cost of acquisition, drive down the cost of decision making, and ensure that we've got interoperability and that we've got an enterprise sensibility in the kinds of things that we do. I'll hit on that here in a second, but Neetopedia was really designed to drive down acquisition costs. And so we were able to address two of what turns out to be three major acquisition considerations. The first, again, because it's a very open-ended model, we're able to now field ideas that we didn't know to ask for. We simply say, Neetopedia includes our 10 core mission areas, 10 things that we do. If you've got ideas to help us improve our 10 things, submit them. And we've got a process that handles them very effectively. So it is designed to handle what most acquisition professionals hate, that is the unsolicited idea, in a very rigorous way. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but that's where the hard part is associated with this model, how you effectively marshal those ideas to the right people. Part of that process is empowering those people to ask for things very easily and getting them to surface the kinds of things that they're looking for and the kinds of things that they do. That's where Neetopedia really comes in and is very effective. But it points to a third need that we haven't solved yet. And that is that it requires, now we're doing lots. We've received 70% of the submissions via the site are from non-traditional performers, those who've never done business with the government. It's driving us to lots of smaller acquisitions. That's great, except that puts a whole lot of burden on our procurement shop in order to engage in these small procurements. So we look to other elements of this. Mark mentioned from DARPA, the Cyber Fast Track model. They do, using that model, they were able to do guaranteed 10-day procurements. So that is from the time that a need or an opportunity was identified to the contract was let was 10 days or less. In fact, they averaged 7 days in order to get there. Now, it turns out that model can be repeated much more broadly, but it runs, there are places where it can be abused, for sure, and it is not common to many procurement officers' set of practices. Now, that shouldn't stop us. We are not asking anyone to compromise on auditability, transparency, oversight in any way, shape, or form, and we don't have to. But implementing a variation on the very theme that they did there, we're calling it Streamline Acquisition for Innovation and Learning, where for contracts $700,000 and below, we are looking to engage in 10-day procurement. Now, I don't have the horsepower to push this through alone, so I'm actually looking for help from folks in the audience so that we can drive this change model, again, that is not just applicable in our model. The template's there. We just need to drive for it and make sure that all the safeguards are in place. Okay? I'd like to ask a quiz right now of who remembers the first two principles. Let's just review real quick, because unless someone wants to raise their hand. First is innovation depends on the workforce. That means engaging people much lower down in your organization in decision-making than most folks are used to, and removing the professional program manager, the acquisition professional, the senior manager from the decision in terms of what things we should try. Those people were all there for very good reasons so that we don't break the rules while we're trying, but don't make them the decisioner makers. Allow that to happen in a lower part in the organization. Second one is innovation requires creative destruction. So change your decision structures to drive to much smaller projects. Force that change. That's a hard reform to make. It's the thing that Google and Amazon were built on. Actually, Amazon much more so than any other organization. They built that agility into the core of their business models, and it didn't matter what they were. What they are at the end, what they are today is much different than what they set out to be. Actually, it's a great extension of what their initial core values, but because they were able to adapt, they're something tremendous now. And that's what we need at the core of all of our government. All right, so on to number 3, principle number 3. This was mentioned earlier. It's really in deference to Joy's law. No matter how many smart people inside your organization, there are always more smart people outside, right? So that principle means if you want to be an innovative organization, you need to have world-class mechanisms to bring ideas from the outside of your organization into your mission settings. No fair bringing it from the outside into a lab. Because I come from a lab setting, a government lab, there's what's known as the valley of death, the distance between the lab and the actual mission environments. Bringing it to a lab is not hard. It doesn't get you any closer to the enterprise than it was when it was on the outside. So we're talking about actually bringing these things to the core of what we do without compromising the integrity and without adding to the complexity of what we do in unnecessary ways anyway. So anyone can bring in a capability and stand it up in a standalone fashion. What happens when you do that? You create a mini stovepipe. You add to the complexity of your organization. So how do you bring these ideas from non-traditional performers all the way in to the core of how you do business? Well, it turns out the way that we do this is exactly the wrong way. We engage in, there are 6 friction points that stand between that great idea on the outside and our enterprise. Those are discovery, evaluation, integration, accreditation, acquisition, and adoption. All right? So we have to address all those by switching the model. We do it by, instead of bringing innovation to our enterprise, we bring our enterprise to the innovator. Now, this is radical for an intelligence community agency. This is maybe a little bit shocking to you. Now, obviously, there's a lot about what we do that we can't talk about publicly. But it turns out one of the things that is public knowledge is our security standards. So if I'm going to take a capability, an information technology, a nice tool that some Silicon Valley developer developed and put it in my environment, if it doesn't meet my security standards, guess what? I'm going to hand it off to a third party who's going to have to rework that thing to make it work with my security standards. The minute you hand it off to a third party, dispassionate third party, you've incurred a cost and oftentimes a time sink that's going to prevent that good idea from making it into your mission environment. And in fact, because you incur that cost, now you're going to have to do a pretty rigorous evaluation before you get to that point, and so on and so on. So this builds a whole lot of risk into the way that we buy. If I can guarantee that you meet my security standards, and the thing that I don't compromise on, up front, I can try that capability, and if I like it, I can field it, and our goal is to field it in mission settings in 30 days. Now, we're not there. In fact, we have a long way to go in order to get there, but that's the goal. So what am I doing? It's called the Open Innovation Gateway, and effectively what we're doing is exposing to outside innovators an integration environment that they can access from the internet. So I'm not asking them to come to a lab. It's a very low barrier to entry environment. I'm saying, if you want to sell me your capability, show me it. Show me that it meets the security specs, and in fact, I can write into my acquisition document, show me that you are gateway compliant, and then we do business. What it means to be gateway compliant means you meet, among other things, our core authentication, authorization, and auditing requirements, many of them not that much different than what other government agencies have in terms of the requirements you have for technologies coming in. What this creates is self-service integration. You don't have to turn to third-party providers to get you the kinds of ideas that you want in your mission settings with this. They will, and it turns out, idea providers, I've been on this side, trying to find exactly the right person in government that you could sell your capability to, who has the means to actually act on it if they find it, the opportunity to go after it, the smarts to understand how this is transformative. That is a very expensive endeavor. If you can go to a place where you can prove the enterprise worthiness of your capability, people will. And in fact, they will do the development work for you so that you can rapidly then bring in the good things that you find. It truly enables you to get to a try before you buy model. So what's key to this is many disruptive technologies are sitting on the sidelines right now because for me to engage, one example of what came into the gateway, there was a vendor who came to us with claims that they could do certain things several orders of magnitude faster than what we could. And we got smart people working on this problem. And actually, when you heard their claims, all the smart people were like, that's ridiculous. That's not how it works. You can't do that. And had they submitted a white paper proposal to us, it would have found its way into the circular as an impossible idea, not worth my time to even get any further with this. No. But because they were able to come into our environment and show us in an environment, not physically, virtually, developing, who knows, in their underwear, in their lab somewhere, against our service endpoints, showing us, validating their claims against an environment that was much like ours. It turns out their claims are true, only in certain circumstances, but in circumstances that are important to us. Now we can engage in a smart acquisition of, now that we know what's possible, we can ask for it appropriately. So it's a different model in terms of how you do acquisition. I'm not saying that these are the only initiatives that you should do. Those principles, if you fully enact them, will change the way you do business. They're the central themes to how you act with agility. There's lots of different ways to get to the outcomes that we desire, but they're really built around those core principles. So that's all I've got for you. Any questions? I want to take a few more seconds to then, because I didn't fully answer a good question that a gentleman had earlier regarding how you avoid, when you do a pilot, how do you avoid locking in to that solution in terms of a sole source in the end and endanger competitive transparency down the road. In fact, that's the main objection that folks have to actually doing pilots. The key principle that you have to go on in this is, again, remembering our purpose of a pilot is buying down risk. It's not making long-run decisions. Don't make the long-run decision before you understand the parameters associated with that decision. So that's one. Second is to ensure fungibility. So fungibility is an economic term. It basically means the replaceability of anything. So if you do a thing, whatever it is, if you build a system and it is not replaceable from the start, you've just introduced vendor or solution lock. It's the thing that causes us to throw good money after bad. Look, every one of our agencies has a major acquisition program where the thinking was, you know what, we need standardization. We got too many moving parts, too many rogue elements, and we're just not working together, so we need standardization. We need to do a great big initiative to make sure everything works together. I could mention a few famous ones. I'll spare you all. The big major failed program. Everyone sort of thinks, oh, it was just the people before us. They weren't smart enough to figure out what that one great big thing is that we all should be doing. Don't do that. That's the wrong model. Standardization is, in economic terms, the same thing as monopoly. It is having one thing, wouldn't it be better if we just have one provider of a thing that would save us costs down the road? Has that ever, in economic theory or practice, resulted in cost savings? It doesn't. Instead, the thing that reduces costs in economic terms is a commodity model, which is basically I don't mean to be giving an economics lesson here, but it's the replaceability of everything. A commodity is, by definition, a thing that you can buy coal from here or there or anywhere, and it's going to be the same thing. It's not so much that we need to have solutions that are the same thing, but that every solution has to be replaceable. If you can get to that, then you can have disposable IT. If you can get to that, then you can change, as soon as something comes along that's better than the thing that you have, you can immediately replace that thing. That depends on you having standards in place. Now, standards are not the kinds of things you impose on people. They're the things that people adopt because they choose to. And that means creating the conditions such that people have choice. And oftentimes we don't go that route. So it's a very important second piece of this. If your pilot is not allowing you to replace, then it's not a pilot. And rethink the definition of the pilot before you go forward. Okay, I'm going to give you the Doney challenge. It's $1 for a question that makes me uncomfortable. And it can't involve my high school years. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this will make you uncomfortable or not, but my name is Rosella Marshall, and I'm with USAID. And I would be interested in hearing you discuss the processes that you went through when you first went to DIA, as far as convincing the senior management to give you the leeway to implement this innovative program.
That's, well, I'm going to give you $1 anyway because that's such a good question. Because there was no roadmap. in this, and the term Chief Innovation Officer, I don't know that I was the first in government, but certainly one of the first. There were certainly a lot of misconceptions about what it was, including my own, in terms of what it would be. It was clear, this notion of principal leadership was really a mentor who showed me this concept. And it became that model, really boiling it down. Who could disagree with the 3 principles that I put out? Who would not like those? Well, if you like those, then why would you object to this initiative, which is really designed to go after that? We produced an innovation strategy. Those 2 things are it's almost an oxymoron. So it was really a layout of those principles and some things that we were going to do to go after it, initiatives. That strategy you can get to, it's at www.dia.mil/innovation. We're about to come out with a 2015 update, and that's going to give us a scorecard for some of the things that I've mentioned here today and how we're doing. And it's not all rosy. But that was the approach that we really went after. Look, even I gave you those 3 principles. There's a principle higher than that, which is really emphasizing leadership over management. We have lots of managers in government. We struggle a little bit more in terms of leaders. And the difference between those 2 comes down, mostly they're the same, but there's one difference. One is about management is about taking control in order to achieve an outcome. Leadership is about giving control in order to achieve an outcome, and setting a vision, but empowering folks to go after it. That piece put in place, driving towards quick outcomes. So if I didn't get outcomes in the first 6 months, no one would take me seriously, and we did. And it really started with empowering the workforce, tapping into all the latent ideas that were out there in order to go after it. And then partnering. So, man, that's a long answer to your good question. Carol's ideas are magnificent. Her implementation is outstanding. We came across each other, and it was, match made in heaven. We're doing different things, but complementary. And Mark, in the Buyers Club more generally, I encourage you all to get involved with the Buyers Club so that we can share good ideas that come about. So as much as anything, rely on other people to help you succeed early on. I hope that sufficiently answered, but you get the dollar anyway. Thanks.
Well, just to follow up, what were some of the roadblocks that you encountered, and how did you handle those roadblocks as far as persuading? Okay,
now this is difficult. It's challenging to talk about in public settings. Look, I actually went up to NSA, sat down with some folks up there in terms of their leadership. They showed me a document from 1954, their original director, that emphasized the importance of innovation. So, letter to the workforce, we got to innovate to succeed, and so there it was. And here we are 60 years later, and if you ask any of our agencies, are you innovative, how many do you think would say yes, including mine? We're not there yet. So clearly, there's conventional wisdom getting in the way of us getting to this goal. And again, a lot of it had to do with the very people who said, we need to innovate. We're the ones who are saying, and I don't trust what any of you people are doing, and so you got to give me. They were before I came on, in my position, they debated the meaning. So they set up, we got to take innovation seriously. They set up an innovation advisory board made up of principals from across the agency, and they debated the meaning of the word innovation for a year. That was their effort to attack the innovation problem. And the reason, actually, that they did it kind of makes sense. Each person, each entity involved wanted innovation to mean the thing that they were doing so that they could get the money associated with it. My office has no money. This makes me very powerful within the organization for 2 reasons. You can't stop me by taking away my money. And second, it forces me to engage in a partnership posture. I have to work with others in order to succeed as far as this is concerned. So it drives me outward in order to get to the end state. But the biggest obstacle was this mindset that the way to get to innovation is to run out and stop things. Kill those rogue initiatives that are out there. Now, there's some value in that, but that's not the principal consideration, and everyone sort of thinks it is. Got to free up money by killing bad stuff. What you find is when you come forward with good platforms that empower people to solve their own problems, they will choose you. You don't have to go out and stop them from doing what it is that they're doing. So focus on those platforms, enabling components much more effectively. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Denise Ross, and I'm a Presidential Innovation Fellow assigned to Energy. And I thought I heard you describe a process that seems like grassroots IT governance, where the people closest to the mission edge are setting priorities. Can you describe more about how that works?
Yes. So in every one of the 4 initiatives that I mentioned were somewhat of a decentralized model for governance across the board. One of the specific initiatives is the thing called Nerd Brigade. And Nerd Brigade it's sort of a hybrid between central control and decentralized control in this way. The central control authority points the nerds in a particular direction. And what we're actually considering doing is we have a small number of nerds, and they are in high demand given the success that they've had. So we can't send them everywhere within the organization. We're asking people to compete with their challenges for nerds' time. In the absence of that, leadership says, go over there and work with those folks who seem to be struggling. We don't know what the requirement is. We don't know what it is that the outcome's going to be. Sit with them. And it turns out every time we do that, great things happen. That's not a surprise. Everyone knows the power of co-creation, and that if you engage an end user and a technologist together, great things happen. What I think is relatively new about our model is we're not interested in doing it in this pocket or that cell or this lab, but anywhere in our enterprise. So we need to set the conditions in order to do that. But every one of these is empowering someone who doesn't traditionally get a voice in saying what we need to speak and decide.